professional wrestling. Literally the only good excuse to wear a onesie. And that's right, babies, you're not pulling it off. Put on some jeans and a button-down like a fucking person. Specifically, I want to talk about the undisputed corporate champion of wrestling, the WWE, formerly known as the WWF, until, and this is true, they lost a court case to the World Wildlife Fund. Presumably thanks to that fund's powerful team of panda lawyers. And look, before we go any further, let me say this. I like wrestling. And you might be surprised to hear that, but I'd argue it's objectively entertaining. And the WWE has, over the years, delivered numerous ludicrous and genuinely incredible moments, from when Jake the Snake Roberts set a live cobra on Macho Man Randy Savage, to the time Braun Strowman suplexed the Big Show off the turnbuckle and broke the entire ring, to when Stone Cold Steve Austin drove a beer truck into the arena and sprayed the corporation with a beer hose, not to be mistaken with the time that Kurt Angle drove a milk truck into the arena and sprayed Stone Cold Steve Austin with a milk hose. And then there was whatever the fuck this is.
Oh my God, here we go! Oh my God, what's gonna happen? Look out! Oh my God!
Everything about that is fantastic. But my favourite part is, after the table was lit on fire, the commentator asking, what's gonna happen? What was he expecting to happen? Oh, the table's on fire. Oh my God, here comes a hibachi chef and he's making one of those onion volcanoes on the table. Now he's doing indoor s'mores. Oh my God! And look, it is worth talking about the WWE tonight for multiple reasons. First, it's astonishingly popular. It has over 1 billion fans on social media. It has 2 highly rated cable shows, its own streaming network, reality shows, video games, and even a movie studio, which has produced such hits as The Scorpion King, Walking Tall, The Marine 2, The Marine 3, The Marine 4, The Marine 5, The Marine 6, and of course, Lincoln. By the way, their first choice to play Abraham Lincoln was actually Brutus the Barber Beefcake, but he wasn't available, so the role went to Daniel Day-Lewis, who was fine. And look, this company makes a lot of money. Last year, it generated a record $930 million in revenue. In fact, WrestleMania alone, which is taking place next Sunday, is one of the most valuable sports brands in the world, ranking higher than the World Series, which actually makes sense when you think about it, because while the World Series is mostly spent watching a millionaire in a button-down think about whether or not to throw a ball, WrestleMania involves things like this.
No! Oh my God! No! For the love of mankind! Shane just exploded through our table!
Are you not entertained? How could any other TV show top that? In fact, I would argue every other show should just be called, unfortunately, not a guy exploding through a table, and this show should very much be included in that. But the other reason that it's worth talking about the WWE is because of the prevalence of stories like these.
Eddie Guerrero found dead in a Minneapolis hotel room. The World Wrestling star was just 38 years old.
We have just confirmed that Randy Macho Man Savage has died.
China, one of the most famous wrestlers in the 90s, has now died. She was 46 years old.
Pro wrestling legend King Kong Bundy has died at the age of 61.
He came here, we were in Studio A, and he lifted me almost up to the ceiling. He'll be missed, just 61 years old. These wrestlers dying early.
Wow, that is a harrowing statement there from Brian Kilmeade, only slightly dampened by his childlike wonder at how high the big man lifted him. And how did that even happen? Did Bundy offer him? Did Kilmeade ask? Honestly, I wouldn't really be surprised if one of his stock interview questions is, up, horsey ride. But Kilmeade is not actually wrong there, because wrestlers dying early is a troubling trend. 538 tracked the rate of deaths among WWF wrestlers, and the findings were startling. Here is the expected death rate by age group among the population as a whole. Here is the rate among former NFL players, and here is the rate among wrestlers. That is shockingly high. You'd expect that line to be labelled test pilots who lied on their resume, or zookeepers who aren't just going to let some fucking baboon screech at them like that. Hey, enough sass mouth there, buddy. Put some respect on my name. So with that in mind tonight, exactly a week ahead of WrestleMania, let's take a look at how the WWE does business and how it treats its wrestlers. And before we start, you can't talk about the WWE without talking about its chairman and CEO, Vince McMahon, because he is incredibly powerful, as you can see in this actual photo he took for a fitness magazine. The magazine, Scary Grandpa Who Looks Like a Big Bumpy Hot Dog Quarterly. Vince bought the company from his dad and has since overseen its meteoric ascent into the mainstream. Because before he came along, wrestling was splintered into fiefdoms around the country, all of which had their own broadcasts.
Welcome to the special edition of World Class Championship Wrestling.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling.
Welcome to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting hour of the Universal Wrestling Federation.
Look, I get wrestling is all about spectacle and pageantry, but a tuxedo, Jim? A tuxedo? Tone it down a notch, you're not at a fucking gala. Michael, as usual, no notes, you look great, keep living your truth. Now, throughout the 80s and 90s, Vince McMahon gradually eliminated or absorbed his competitors, and now one giant company basically holds a monopoly on the industry. And it's impossible to overstate just how involved Vince is. He's not just CEO, he oversees storylines, scripts, everything, even playing a fictionalized version of himself as the show's overarching villain. Although his choices of how to dramatize that have been pretty questionable, whether it's him forcing female wrestlers to strip, or beating up his supposed illegitimate son, Hornswoggle, or dropping the ultimate racial slur as part of a comedic skit.
What's up, boss? How you doing?
Yeah. What's good in the hood?
Just holding it down, trying to take care of business.
Keep it up, I'm a nigga.
That is rough to watch. And remember, he's in complete control of those scripts. No one is making him do that. And while, yes, he is playing a villain there are many other ways that that can be achieved. Darth Vader was a great villain. Not once did he drop the N-word. Meanwhile, R2 said it pretty much non-stop. It's why he kept getting bleeped. But the fact that McMahon is an active character in wrestling actually gives us an opportunity, because he's taken a lot of in-ring abuse over the years. So at points tonight where you're going to be disgusted with him for, say, using the N-word, I can now simply play a clip like this of The Rock smashing him over the head with a trash can lid.
I'm ready to...
Wrestling's good, it's just very good. But while the character Vince is an arsehole, it's important to know that the real Vince is also an arsehole. And many fans legitimately hate him, because while the WWE has made him a billionaire, many wrestlers say he's treated them terribly. Just listen to Bret Hitman Hart, one of the biggest wrestlers of all time, speaking about his former boss.
Vince McMahon has always had this mentality about treating wrestlers like circus animals. All these wrestlers that have broke their backs making this living for years end up with nothing when it's over. And then they sort of take you out back and they put a slug in the back of your head and dump you out in a... That's the life of a professional wrestler.
Now, that may sound extreme to you, but Hart has good reason to be angry. His own brother Owen died wrestling for Vince. And Hart is frankly far from alone in voicing grievances about his former employer, because the shocking thing about McMahon and his company is the extent to which he shielded himself from responsibility for his wrestlers' welfare. And the main way that he's done this is actually pretty simple, because while you might reasonably think that the wrestlers employed by him are his employees, they're actually not. They're merely independent contractors. Which, as former wrestler Jesse Ventura pointed out on Howard Stern, is just insane.
How are they self-employed when you're signed exclusively?
Right.
You can't work for nobody else.
It's a monopoly.
Yeah. They tell you when and where you'll work. They tell you who you'll work. They can totally control your life.
And you're an independent contractor.
And yet they call you an independent contractor. How has the government allowed them to get away with that for 35 to 40 years?
Yeah, he's got a point there. An independent contractor is someone that you might hire for a specific limited task, like a plumber or an accountant. Wrestlers aren't either of those things, apart from this wrestling plumber and this wrestling accountant. But the vast majority are totally different. And as independent contractors, wrestlers are exempt from most discrimination and occupational safety laws. They also don't get paid annual leave, pensions, or health insurance. And I would argue that, when you look at the Department of Labor and the IRS's specific criteria for independent contractors, it's a complete joke to think that they apply to Vince's wrestlers. For instance, the IRS states that independent contractors should be free to work when and for whom they choose. Well, Vince's wrestlers sign exclusive contracts, so that's complete bullshit. The guidelines also say that someone's probably not an independent contractor if the success or continuation of a business depends to an appreciable degree on the services they provide. Now, I guess the question there is, are wrestlers essential to world wrestling entertainment? It's a good question. I mean, it's not called World Totally Empty Ring Entertainment, so that might be a clue. In fact, if I might quote the company's own website, WWE performers are the company's greatest asset. Without our performers, WWE would not exist. And look, maybe when wrestlers might work years ago for multiple different organisations, it made sense to call them contractors. But now that WWE has a chokehold on this industry, it makes just as much sense to call them that as it does to call Jimmy Carter a panty-dropping fuck machine. It's just clearly not true anymore. And look, for what it's worth, back in 1986, Ventura actually tried to unionise wrestlers, which could have dramatically improved their working conditions, but McMahon stamped it out hard. And if that makes you want to see someone stamp him out hard, I actually have some good news for you.
Sweet chin music! Shawn with sweet chin music to Mr. McMahon! Shawn is now the owner of the World Wrestling Federation!
Wrestling is better than the things you like. And look, and the lack of a union to advocate for wrestlers means that Vince gets to call all the shots, because while literally every major sports league has an off-season for athletes to recover, the WWE works its wrestlers year-round, multiple times a week, both on TV and in untelevised so-called house shows. And big stars may be able to command big money for that, but not every wrestler is a big star. And whenever we've gotten glimpses of wrestlers' contracts, they contain some astonishing clauses. One says if a wrestler is unable to wrestle for as little as 6 weeks because of an injury, the company can terminate their contract, while another releases the company from all liability for damage resulting in permanent injury or death, even if caused by its own negligence, which is a crazy thing for McMahon to put in a contract, and frankly enough to make you want to see him be on the receiving end of his own medical mishap.
How about your foot? Like this.
So we like about that. Still technically more helpful than a visit from Dr. Oz. And when you take all of this together, with wrestlers working as independent contractors in a monopolised industry, largely free from meaningful oversight and able to be fired at any time, you wind up with an environment with huge potential for unsafe conduct. Before Lance McNaught died at 29 of heart failure while struggling with addiction to painkillers, he spoke of the pressure that he felt to work through injury, saying, "Everybody knows that if you get hurt, you work through it because you'll lose your spot." And another top wrestler, CM Punk, has questioned the advice that he was given by a WWE doctor following an incident in the ring.
I got hit with something and it fucking rung my bell and I got a concussion. But we were leaving for Europe the next day. So Doc was leaning on me going, do you have a concussion or can you go to Europe kind of thing? And I was just like, you pigs, I'll go to Europe, whatever. That's on me, that's my fault. I'm dry heaving after every match. I'm either puking for real or I'm just dry heaving because I don't have anything in my stomach. Doc's like, oh, you're sick, here's a Z-Pack. They Z-packed me to death, so much that in December I shit my pants on a SmackDown.
He did. He actually did that, and we actually found that episode of SmackDown, and out of common courtesy, we are not going to show it to you, but this is his face as it was happening. Punk even tweeted about it afterwards, saying, "Just shit my britches on SmackDown, please retweet." Something the WWE then made him take down, even though it's obviously the best tweet ever written. Seriously, you try and think of a better tweet right now. Have you got one? Does it say "shit my britches, please retweet"? Then it's not better, is it? Stand down. But look, it obviously gets much worse than concussed wrestlers shitting themselves on live TV, because wrestlers' bodies regularly get smashed up and undergo general wear and tear, damage that's cumulative and can last a lifetime. But McMahon doesn't provide health insurance for his wrestlers for anything other than injuries that occur inside the ring. In fact, the extent to which he's denied any responsibility for their welfare is astonishing. Just watch him respond to a question years ago about wrestler deaths.
Do you have a reason why these people would be dying under the age of 45?
Why don't you ask yourself that question? I mean, why are you indicating that's my responsibility? These people are dead because...
I'm asking you if it's in any way, shape, or form falls on your shoulders.
I would accept no responsibility whatsoever for their untimely deaths, none whatsoever. As far as, and you've got that little look on your face like,
yeah,
geez, Vince, how can you possibly say that?
Well, but none whatsoever. I mean, they wrestled for you. They were part of your organization. They worked a couple of hundred nights a year for you. They lived this lifestyle.
What are you doing, you weird, weird man? And while all of that is ridiculous, my favourite response isn't actually the weird face or the smacking of the papers. It's answering, why are wrestlers dying early, with, why don't you ask yourself that question? Which, in terms of dodges, is certifiably insane. I don't know, Vince. Maybe because that journalist doesn't employ any wrestlers. And while I know that you don't think you do either, I'm telling you, you're fucking wrong about that. Now, the company will say that they've completely transformed in recent years, and they have taken some positive steps, like banning chair shots to the head and introducing concussion protocols, although CM Punk's experience probably suggests that there may be room for some significant improvement there. But some of the other steps they've taken under their talent wellness program are a little underwhelming, like the fact that they now have annual physical examinations. That's just nothing. I have to take one of those every year to host this show, and I've never once exploded through this table. It's in the name of our show now. The programme also provides for things like cardiovascular and brain testing, which is nice, although remember, they're still responsible for their own health insurance. And while the company says it pays for addiction treatment for former wrestlers, that doesn't really address the underlying issues that get them hooked on pain medication in the first place. And the tragic thing is, some have reluctantly had to drag their bodies back to the WWE because they have no other financial option. Rowdy Roddy Piper continued wrestling into his 40s and 50s, and just listen to him explain why.
Wrestling, it has a tremendous entrance plan. You come in as, boy, here you are, you rock and roll and everything is wonderful. It's got no exit plan.
And Rowdy Roddy Piper should know, a few months ago, he climbed back into the ring.
What would you have me do at 49 when my pension plan I can't take out till I'm 65? I'm not going to make 65. Let's just face facts, guys.
And sadly, he was right about that, because Roddy Piper died in 2015 at the age of 61. And while nothing I say can or should make that okay, I do hope that watching this final clip of Vince in the ring gives you just a tiny piece of catharsis.
He's a billionaire! He owns his company! Yeah! On Lucifer's lips on the biggest house in the WWE! Oh, hell yeah!
You know, the reassuring thing there is, you can fake being kicked in the face or hit in the head with a bedpan, but there is no faking that. So, I guess the question is there any hope here? Well, incredibly, there might be, because there is one group that even McMahon occasionally seems to listen to, and that's the fans. They actually have a strong independent voice in the WWE and have been vocal over the years about everything from the company's dealings with Saudi Arabia to its treatment of female wrestlers who have come a long way from the old days of so-called bra and panty matches. In fact, fans online launched a hashtag #GiveDivasAChance campaign to feature women more prominently, to which Vince himself responded, "We hear you, keep watching." And next week, for the first time ever, WrestleMania will be headlined by a women's match. So wrestling fans don't just go along with whatever the company tells them to cheer and boo. They know what they like, and just as importantly, what they don't like. For instance, the WWE tried for years, literally years, to make Roman Reigns a superstar hero on the level of The Rock. But fans just didn't like him, and they let him and the WWE know about that. And keep in mind as you watch this, Roman Reigns is supposed to be a good guy. They booed him non-stop for 8 minutes. And you might think that's harsh, but I'd argue it's the only rational response to someone with permanently wet hair. How can it always be wet? You look like a pedophile out for a jog. Boo! Boo! So the fans have a big voice here. That's the point. And they really care about these wrestlers and continue to do that long after the WWE has abandoned them. And nowhere was the extent of this devotion more obvious than when legendary wrestler Jake the Snake needed help paying for medical expenses.
Jake has no insurance. He didn't have any money to pay for the surgery, so we had to come up with some kind of solution. So we put up a page on Indiegogo to try to raise the money for his surgery.
Unfucking real.
Where are we at?
Holy cow.
7,000.
In one night?
But the really cool thing that came out of that was Jake got to see how much the fans really cared.
All those years, I guess they did mean something.
Yeah, those years meant a lot to fans. That's why they want him and other wrestlers to be taken care of. There've actually been multiple GoFundMe campaigns to cover both healthcare and funeral expenses for wrestlers that fans have stepped up for, which is heartwarming, but frankly, fans shouldn't be the ones shouldering that responsibility. Here's how bad it is. Even the NFL, for all its massive faults, now offers players health reimbursement accounts and have established a legacy fund for older players who may be dealing with health issues. And when you've lost the moral high ground to the fucking NFL, you are morally subterranean. And so here is where the potential opportunity is. Because remember, WrestleMania, the biggest event in the WWE's calendar, is next Sunday. And if fans in that arena want McMahon to help pay for wrestlers' long-term health care, or just to call them employees, they could say, choose to make up chants about that. The event is live, the crowd is mic'd, they won't be able to cut the chants out. I'm not saying that fans should do that, or make signs, or make lots of signs. I'm just saying, I really hope they make their voices heard on this, because given that Business Hulk here is a billionaire on the broken backs of his non-employees, the very least he can do is show the same dedication to wrestlers that they have shown to his company. And I know that I haven't really said any of this tonight in the preferred language of wrestling fans, so maybe this will help.
Wrestling fans, you cheered at Royal Rumble. You thrilled at Hell in a Cell. You yelled your head off at SummerSlam. Get ready to scream for something new. I'm talking about all your favorite wrestlers having access to retirement accounts, workers' comp, and family and medical leave. How would you feel about watching the most electrifying superstars on the planet do the unthinkable? Live to the age of 65, 70, 75, and beyond! Performing thrilling moves like walking comfortably, bending their knees past a 90-degree angle, and spending quality time with their grandchildren. You could see all this and more if a system was put in place that gave wrestlers things like an off-season, because the human body was not designed to do things like this 200 nights a year. Oh my God! We're talking about bringing premature wrestler deaths back in line with actuarial tables. Did somebody say tables? Ooh, he's gonna need a doctor. And preferably one who won't make him shit his pants on SmackDown. Please retweet! The point is, at WrestleMania 35, why not join thousands of screaming fans in calling for your favorite wrestlers to be employees, so you never have to pay for their future surgery through GoFundMe! And if Mr. McMahon doesn't like it, you know what he can do.
Some wrestlers were definitely harmed in the making of this video.